When you look at the classic Bernie Madoff story, there was no real business there. The whole thing, as I understand it, I think, was just one big Ponzi scheme, right? FTX, that was a real business.
Sam Bankman-Fried released the CEO of the now bankrupt exchange FTX. It has been weeks that he was unaware that the FTX was already commingling user funds.
Caroline Ellison says you knew that FTX funds were being funneled to Alameda. Did you know that?
I knew that there is an open margin position there and that involved
I know, but that's not what I'm
dollar.
asking. If she's in court and you're in court and she's under oath and you're under oath and you're asked, did you know that these funds were being funneled to Alameda, what is your answer?
I did not know that there is any improper use of customer funds.
According to Sam, he was unaware that there was an improper use in customers' funds or it being stolen despite having their terms of service. The users of FTX have a tiny bit of hope that they can get their crypto back. However, it appears that SBF has been on a press tour wishing to ensure that you are familiar with them just as FTX users are. Let's dig into the past. I'm going to be providing you some context and stories about the clips that I'm about to show you in a bit. This is the SBF with the CNBC host Andrew Sorkin at the New York Times Deal Book Summit. Sam was asked a direct question. Did you know FTX was commingling funds? Were you aware of that? It was then followed by, in terms of service for FTX, it says none of the digital assets in your account are the property of or shall or may be loaned to FTX Trading. FTX Trading does not represent or treat digital assets and user accounts as belonging to FTX Trading. So how is it possible that Alameda had this loan of such a large size?
This loan of such a large size.
So there's that piece from the terms of service. But there were a number of other parts of the terms of service and a number of other parts of the platform on top of that. There is the borrow lending facility, where users were lending billions of dollars of assets to each other, collateralized by assets on the exchange.
You obviously got featured contracts where there were leverage positions on. Now, of course, all of this, it's meant to be the case that these are positions where FTX could, if it needed to, margin call those positions and close them down in time such as that it would cover all of those shorts, all those liabilities. Obviously, that wasn't the case here. Moreover, according to Sam's interview, there's just a massive decline when it comes to risk management. He also admitted in the interview that he took less responsibility when it comes to running his company, the FTX.
From myself running FTX.
But just make this very straight. Was there commingling of funds?
Andrew Sorkin mentioned there were commingled funds from the customers of FTX that were not supposed to be commingled with a separate firm.
That were not supposed to be commingled with your separate firm.
I didn't knowingly commingle funds.
Well, it seems like Sam Bankman-Fried has been doing a lot of interviews lately, and he is just letting himself be on the record to accept any questions. Just yesterday, he did admit about the user fraud and commingling funds issue. Interestingly, Caroline Ellison, the CEO of Alameda, FTX's sister company, has been communicating with her.
I think every week or so, something weirder than the previous week would happen. For me, a lot of it was just about sort of, readjusting my expectations and being open to whatever happened.
Moving on, isn't it shocking that SBF finally admits to their fraud case? According to a tweet by CoffeeZilla, number 1, the entirety of SBF's defense is built around avoiding his own terms of service, which says FTX can't loan out funds of ordinary users. Just yesterday, the great journalist CoffeeZilla asked Sam Bankman-Fried why you didn't invest in FTX user assets, even the treasuries. Number 2, I asked Sam.
If it's true that you didn't invest client assets, not even in treasuries, as you said via a now deleted tweet, why do those client assets no longer exist?
I'm just taking a stab at this because I don't have the data, but my best guess is the following, is that there were a lot of those assets remaining. We processed something like, $5 or $6 billion, I think, of withdrawals over the few days prior to, or I guess a few days, during the crash. And there are still a few $1 billion of those remaining, I think, in the estate. And so you put those together, you have many billions of dollars of those assets. But I think, and so that's part of the answer, is that there were a large number of actual assets there. I think there's one follow-up question you'd probably still have there, which is, well, how about people who didn't withdraw and were also in that bucket? And part of the answer is, well, there still do exist some number of billions of dollars of assets.
These users were able to claim their FTX assets, and for those who didn't get the chance to withdraw it, their assets are still with the FTX. Things are about to get more intriguing. Are you guys loving the video? Kindly hit the subscribe button so you can stay updated on my newly uploaded videos. Let's go to the exciting part. Number 3, this is where it gets interesting. For the longest time, I have been a follower of CoffeeZilla, so I can stay updated about the new interesting news when it comes to anything about crypto. Moving on, Sam was once again questioned by CoffeeZilla whether the user's assets are back to 1-to-1, and if Sam can guarantee it. Sam hesitated and proceeded to talk about the news where he admitted that the user money of FTX was fungible and everybody was paid from the same fungible wallet. He basically admitted to commingling. CoffeeZilla once again roasted Sam. In a phone call, he mentioned that we're talking about like this, no, is there 1-to-1 assets, because that's the whole thing we're talking about. A separation of funds, so those funds should be a completely different in a different place, in a different wallet than everybody else. What you talked about servicing billions of dollars of withdrawals has nothing to do with those specific digital assets, because that's just first come first serve. Whoever pulled out first. We're talking about people who never agreed to have their funds loaned out, who never agreed to have their funds put on margin. They should have, according to your terms of service, 1-to-1 backing. It should all still be in some bucket somewhere.
Confident today to say that those are absolutely real and they exist and they're present. People are backed 1-to-1 on client digital assets.
So I think, and again, I'm just taking a stab here, but I think what happened is that if you look at especially a lot of the withdrawals that happened, those withdrawals were not necessarily only coming from people who never used margin trading or futures or staking or anything else. Those weren't just withdrawals from people who were keeping 1-to-1 backed, or were sort of just keeping them as pure spot balances, and it was omnibus wallets between the various categories. And so I think that the answer to your question is that a number of those assets were withdrawn by people who had balances on the exchange, potentially in the few days prior to the collapse. And if you wanted to think about it this way, it could be that that happened. And then, when the collapse sort of completed, that effectively meant that there was, if you wanted to put it this way, like fungibility created during those withdrawals between assets for people who had and had not been using.
Now, it all became clear after you guys heard the FTX really admitted that user money was fungible. Number 4, here's where I start to push Sam much harder. Basically, it means that there was no presence of separation between the funds if there is fungibility between 2 different FTX buckets of money, which brings to us that there is only one bucket available. Meaning, some users of FTX who didn't agree to loan their money to Alameda and even to margin traders were involuntarily forced to take on that risk. SBF sees it as dishonesty towards the customers.
I can take the money that someone who didn't sign up to those same risky terms didn't agree to. Isn't that fraud?
So I'm specifically talking about what happened in the days immediately during and following the crash, in that 3 or so day period. And during that period, I think we may have allowed just generalized withdrawals. I think that was, if you're saying that we should have held up withdrawals for everyone who had an open futures position, for clawback potential or something like that, I don't know, maybe that would have been the right thing to do. I hear where you're coming from on that. I felt, at the time, that we wanted to treat customers equally. It was an incredible.
But they had agreed to different things, so you can't treat them equally.
Number 5, now that Sam admitted they were commingling funds for withdrawals, he started getting defensive. Things are getting kind of twisted. Sam was in a defensive stance now that he admitted about the commingling of funds. CoffeeZilla was now accused of grandstanding monopolizing the time by the SBF.
I mean, it's like, this is the whole problem of the story of FTX and Alameda, is all the funds were being commingled. Isn't this just another story of commingling funds, except this is now FTX, which you can't pass the blame to Alameda anymore. This is your company, your funds, that you are treating all the clients the same when they clearly signed up to different terms of service.
So I just want to respond to that. And please, I completely respect your question, but you have monopolized all of these discussions, CoffeeZilla. You need to let others speak, and you need to respond to what I'm saying and not grandstand as much here. I completely understand where you're coming from. But to answer your question, I didn't make a decision there. We processed withdrawals as we normally do until it became clear we couldn't anymore, at which point we shut them off. And it was the case that, at that point, there was a big liquidity hole. That's what happened. If you want to judge that process and think that we should have been spending those days frantically trying to code up a new withdrawal process, I disagree with you, but I understand where you're coming from.
Number 6, that's even worse. The main issue here is not just about the coding up, but it is how you treat your clients the way you told them they'd be treated. From the very start, FTX always told a lie with regards to their terms of services. And the withdrawals were not even segregated as they promised. The SBF conned a lot of individuals because they promised them that this comes in with a huge pot of money. The SBF just can't keep their stories straight. Just last night, customers were even buying and selling and trading bitcoins on FTX. But they weren't really buying nor trading. It was used for the sake of a fake entry into their FTX account. The reason why the market empire wanted to cover this is because it just doesn't make any sense at all. Share this video online and let this story out to other people as well. Subscribe to Market Empire so you can stay tuned on the most controversial issues happening here in the crypto world. Thank you so much for watching.